the park. Part of my duties were to record 2 large rock art sites. In order to do so, I needed to develop a method to record the rock art sites, as there was no standardized methodology at the park. When I first arrived at the park, I looked at the previously recorded rock art site forms, and there were at least 3 different methods that they used to record the sites. This created quite a management challenge because all of the site forms were recorded in different ways. So I spent some time to develop a new method that's more standardized for the park. I first created a set of detailed boulder panel attachments that were based on the forms used by the American Rock Art Research Association, IMAC forms, and California DPR forms. To standardize the method with the current archaeology site recording, I decided to use archaeology forms that are used by the park rather than rock art specific archaeology site forms, which some of the forms had used before. But the larger challenge to the recording the rock art sites was actually developing a standardized sketching method. Sketches of rock art usually consume a disproportionate amount of time, which leads to rock art sites not being fully recorded or not being recorded at all. So I decided to test 4 different current rock art sketching methods to find the most effective and most time-efficient manner for the park. The methods I tested involved the use of 2 rulers, a string grid, tracing a photo with acetate, and tracing a photo using an iPad in the field. For the test, I recorded the same rock art panel 4 different times, keeping track of the amount of time, relative ease, and any perceived benefits or challenges to the method. The 2-ruler method took 1 hour and 20 minutes to complete a sketch. The problem with the method was that it was hard to keep the rulers in the exact same place. I was recording a panel that was on a vertical surface, and so you can't just set one ruler up and measure down from it like drawing a profile. I actually had to use one ruler and then kind of contort around to use the other ruler to measure down. And so we couldn't always get it in exactly the same place, and this introduced a large amount of error. And in fact, that method produced the least accurate sketch. The string grid took 1 hour and 9 minutes to complete, which is a decrease from using the 2-ruler method. But there was also problems with this method. It was difficult to get the string grid to hang straight. And I used Scotch painter's tape, which doesn't leave a lot of residue, but it's also not a very sticky kind of tape. So when I was hanging it on a vertical surface, occasionally it would fall off. And having a light breeze didn't add to that. So that introduced a great source of error, as I constantly was having to reattach it. But surprisingly, it actually was a little bit more accurate than using 2 rulers. The 3rd method is tracing on acetate with a photo. Now this is a great method, but it requires 2 different trips to the field. The first trip, we had to go out and take photos with someone holding a mugboard that has a scale on it of 10 centimeters. Then you have to go back to the office and enhance the photograph. Using Photoshop, you can adjust the contrast and brightness and then convert it to black and white and print it out. On the second trip to the field, then you take a piece of acetate and you place it over the photo and directly trace that scale too. The problem with the method, though, is that you need to make sure you're taking a photograph directly parallel, otherwise you're introducing an angle which creates distortion in and of itself. The final method used tracing of a photo with an iPad. It took 1 hour and, about 1 hour and a half-ish to do the sketch. But you have to add in that there was also prep time of taking the picture and transferring it over to the iPad, and that actually ended up being about 1 hour and 48 minutes. But this was also a great method, but there were a lot of difficulties using an iPad in the field. First off, there's a ton of glare if you're out in the sun. So in order to see the screen, you kind of had to hide under my jacket. And then kind of look up at the panel every once in a while. And that's not the best way to do it. Also, I used a stylus, but the palm rejection on an iPad isn't really great. So if you touch the screen with your hand while you're trying to draw, it creates a whole bunch of different marks on the screen. You have to later take those marks out. But it does create digital layers. I used Adobe Ideas so I could transfer it right into Adobe Illustrator. So I already had a digital sketch. But the biggest problem I found out later in the year was that iPads overheat in the sun. So you could work for a short period of time, and then they absorb too much heat, and you get this horrible warning that says temperature, and you can't do anything until they cool down. It's kind of hard to find shade out there to hide it until it cooled down. So even though it was a great method, there were a lot of problems associated with it, and it really wasn't practical for what we were doing out there. So we decided to go with our large rock art recording projects to use the acetate method, as it was most easy to do and it took the least amount of time. So after I did this test, I decided to develop a multi-scalar approach to rock art recording involving 4 different levels met at different needs based on who was going out there and how much time they had. So in the first method, they just fill out all of the regular paperwork. Each method, you fill out the boulder panel attachment and the site form. And each boulder gets a different form associated with it. And in that method, they're just taking photographs of the panels with a scale. Those photographs can later be drawn in the office if necessary. The second phase involves doing brief field sketches of things you can't exactly see in a photograph. And then the third phase actually uses that acetate trace method. But as I said, that takes quite a bit more effort to put into it, and so that's a method we use when volunteers are coming out to help us record MIG sites. And then the fourth method is very similar to that, but we also add in the fact that you can take all the pictures and then draw them in the office. Wacom makes these cute little digital drawing tablets, and so you can just draw on the tablet and you can see it on the screen. And then you can take all of those digital sketches and put them onto your iPad using iSketch, and you save them as an SVG, which is a file type. And then you can take those out and then just add in anything that's a little bit different. So that, and then on a level 4, we also do element analysis. But we want element analysis to be done by one person in order to keep it consistent. So overall, the multi-scalar approach has proven to be an effective way of rock art recording at the park. We have tried it, it's worked pretty well for now, but we're still working on it and it needs to be implemented more, and there is definitely not a shortage of rock art at the park that needs to be recorded. So, all right, thank you.